Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lauren. I am a graduate of the University of California, Irvine, currently working in an academic research lab doing research and trying to get more clinical experience shadowing, planning to apply this next rotation in June. If you guys haven't connected with me on PreMedStar, make sure to search me and add the connect. It'd be great to keep in contact. And I'm going to go ahead and just walk you guys through a little bit of the PreMedStar site. All right. So for those of you who aren't PreMedStar members, this is kind of what your home screen of PreMedStar looks like. I'm happy to share mine with you guys. Since this whole webinar is kind of focused on the MCAT, I thought I'd highlight some of the tools that I used when I was preparing for the MCAT myself. So something really cool that PreMedStar has is this note share. And once you click on it, you can see that people can really post all their notes. You see here that Dee posted her MCAT mnemonics to help her memorize things. And there's even detailed notes on topics such as cellular respiration, mutations. And there's anything covering from bio to chemistry to physics to psych-soc. So if you guys are struggling with some notes that you have, maybe looking at another student's notes will help get that information through to your brain. So that's something I found really helpful when I was studying for the MCAT. Another resource I really wanted to highlight is the MChat. And if you guys are studying for the MChat, I really recommend you to populate this group chat. And basically there's just a ton of students, some who have taken the MCAT, some who are currently studying, who are there monitoring the chat. You can post specific questions or look for tips on getting endurance, finding a study routine, trying to find new resources. So really check out the MChat if you're starting to get into your MCAT preparation. It's great to have a little community of students who are also prepping for the same exam. So make sure you guys check that out. And I just want to real quick congratulate the pre-med of the week, Yamona. I believe her name is pronounced that way. I hope so. Everyone go read about her and see the amazing stuff she's doing at UC Berkeley, and go ahead and give her a big congrats. And I just want to remind you guys that if you are selected for pre-med of the week, you will be entered in to win pre-med of the year, which is a really big deal. And going on from there, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about this PreMedStar MCAT deal we have for you guys. So if you guys are thinking about enrolling in a Kaplan MCAT course, you can save $250 throughout this next week. So you see here that this code is valid until the 22nd of this month. All you have to do at checkout is enter the code PreMedStar200, and then you automatically save $250 on your comprehensive MCAT prep course. So if you're thinking you're going to enroll, do that soon so you can save a little bit of money, and hopefully with PreMedStar and Kaplan, you can get to where you want to be on your MCAT. Perfect. And then I'm going to real quick just show you guys this PreMedStar YouTube video.
Being at PreMed is hard work. With so much going on, how do you keep track of it all? You're in clubs, you're doing volunteer work, research, presentations, physician shadowing, the list goes on and on. The last thing you want to lose track of, all the wonderful things you've done during your pre-med journey. Well, you don't have to. With PreMedStar's on-track portfolio, you can log all of your pre-medical activities in one place and access them anytime from anywhere. When it comes time to apply to medical school, you'll be good to go. Stay on track with PreMedStar on-track portfolio. Join our online community of pre-medical students for free at www.premedstar.com and tell a friend.
Perfect. And speaking of the PreMedStar profile, I was just going to share with you guys mine real quick. So the profile is one of my favorite features of PreMedStar. Here's my profile that I'm happy to share with you guys. And like you saw in the video, you can really update everything on here. You have your GPA, any graduate degrees. You can also put in your MCAT and log all your clinical hours. And it's really important for you to note down all the different clubs and organizations you're involved with, some different volunteer activities and other work experience. Right after this webinar, I'm going to go ahead and update my clinical experience and add the extra hours from this past month. Recommend you guys keep a good log of yours. You can also include any research experience or publications on there, as well as any awards, scholarships, and honors. So make sure to keep up with that because med schools can see it. And we're just about to head into the segment, but I just want to tell you guys that we do really welcome questions. If you guys have any questions throughout this webinar, go ahead and post them inside of the Q&A. You guys can also post your questions in the chat. It's just a lot easier for us to see it through the Q&A section only. And if you guys aren't able to hear some of the responses or want to go back and watch this video again, we will be posting it onto the PreMedStar YouTube channel. So you guys can always watch it for a second or third time. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Dr. Dale onto the screen, and he's got some exciting news to share with you guys.
Hello. Can you guys see me? Let me go to my chat. I say, yeah, very good.
Yes.
Hey guys, so I'm Dr. Dale. I'm one of the folks who gets to run PreMedStar. I'm a pulmonary critical care doctor, so that means I take care of the lungs and ICU. So I'm the guy you don't want to see in the hospital, right? So when you watch TV, you see all the life support pulling the plugs, all those big loud vent machines. That's me. I'm that guy. But one of the best things I get to do is help run PreMedStar. And we're really excited because probably the biggest question we've been asked probably since PreMedStar went online is when are you guys coming out with the app? So we're finally really, really excited. Today we actually finally have the app for Android. So you guys can get an early sneak peek at the app if you have Android. Sorry, iPhone folks, but if you're Android, if you have a Google phone or anything like that, you can actually go to your Android Play Store and download the PreMedStar app and get a sneak peek at it early right now. To get it, so if you're Android or iPhone, we want you guys to text the word PreMed to 313131. So text the word PreMed to 313131. And what that's going to do is send you the link automatically to download that app on your phone so you don't have to go searching for it. If you're an iPhone user, the app should be available for you guys next week probably. And once it's available for iPhone, we'll officially launch it for everybody. When we launch it for everybody, if you actually text that word PreMed to 313131, then we're going to automatically make you eligible to win a free MCAT prep course if you download the app within 24 hours and send out a couple invites to your friends. Then you get a chance of winning the MCAT prep course, which otherwise is $2,400 or something like that. So really excited about that. One really cool thing I want to tell you guys about the app, and I'll tell you why we made it. So, we do a lot of speaking to various pre-med clubs and conferences. And probably the biggest question we get asked is, how do I know if I'm doing a good job as a pre-medical student? So PreMedStar, your profiles and all those things that we build for you guys to help keep track of your pre-med journey is great. But there's a better way now that you can figure out how you're doing as a pre-medical student. What we did was we built a performance tab, which is an app exclusive. So you're only going to have it on the app. And I don't think I can show it to you guys, but I might try to do it anyway, see if it works. But I'll give you guys an example of it. So when you get on the app, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but I'm going to try anyways. So when you get in the app, it's kind of just like Facebook, and you get in there, you can scroll through, and you have your activity stream. But what's really cool is this performance tab. When you get to the performance tab, you have different fields here. You can select the field you want. For example, I can click on cumulative GPA, and whenever I click on GPA, what happens is I can compare myself to the rest of PreMedStar to see where I fit compared to everybody else. So you can't see anybody else's GPA, so I can't see Lauren's GPA, but what I can do is see where I fit compared to everybody else in PreMedStar, and it gives me my percentile. We do the same thing for the MCAT, for your clinical hours, all sorts of things we're building into this performance center to let you guys know where you stand as pre-meds to help you guys stay on track. So that's really exciting. The few people who have already played around with the app, they love it. And again, if you're an Android user, go ahead and text the word PreMed to 313131. We'll send you the link to download the app right now. You get a sneak peek. And iPhone folks, we're going to get it out to you guys next week. And once it's ready for iPhone, probably next week. And once it's ready for iPhone, we're going to officially launch it. And then we're going to be giving away an MCAT prep course. And it's going to be really exciting. A lot of cool stuff coming with this app. That's all I have to say. Lauren, 1 second. I just added this. I'm going to see if we can launch this poll here. So I just
sure.
poll. I'm going to click on launch. And so you guys should have a poll button somewhere on your screen. You should be able to answer these poll questions. I see people already answering, so perfect. So we want to know when you guys are taking the MCAT, and we want to know what kind of phone you guys have, because that will help us better make services for you to make sure we're meeting your needs. And let's get that poll open. I guess we can actually just keep it open for a while.
Yeah, we'll let the responses filter in.
All right, and then I think, Lauren, you can probably keep on going, and Megan can get going here in a second. But I'll leave that poll open, and then if it gets in your way, Megan wants to come on, let me know, and we'll close it down. Otherwise, you guys text PreMed 313131. Get the app, really cool stuff. If you have the app, we're going to be doing tons of giveaways over the next few weeks, months, but you got to have the app for it. All right, I am disappearing. Bye.
All right, everyone say bye, Dr. Dale. We'll be seeing him a little bit later. I'm super excited for the app to come out, and I just want to make sure I share this helpful link with you guys. So if you're on your computer right now, you can go ahead and just take a screenshot of this screen. It's going to tell you the number to text and the keyword PreMed. So you guys are going to want to text that. Android users, you can already start downloading the app. Us iPhone users, we have to wait a little bit longer, but it's coming soon. So without further ado, why don't I have Megan come on the screen, and she's going to tell you guys about how she aced the MCAT. Everyone say congrats to her. She recently just got accepted to medical school. So let's hear what she has to say.
All right. Hi, guys. Thanks, Lauren. Can y'all give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me? And thank you guys for all the congrats. Oh, awesome. Glad to hear it. Okay, well, hi, welcome to the webinar. Super excited to have you guys. As Lauren said, my name is Megan, and I'm a current senior at the University of Mississippi. I'm majoring in economics, and I'm minoring in chemistry. And I'm currently applying to medical school, obviously, since I just got accepted. So I took the MCAT this past January, and I did score pretty well, and I really like talking to other people about how to prepare for the MCAT. Because it's obviously something that we all go through together and people get pretty nervous about it. So make sure if you guys have any questions about anything, just throw them in the chat, throw them in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer them. I'll give y'all a quick little rundown of how I prepared for the MCAT and just a little bit about the general kind of facts about it too. And then I really want to leave plenty of time for questions though, since I know that that's probably going to be more helpful than anything for you guys. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, if I can find it. There we go. Alrighty. Let's see if it will let me present. Good deal. All right. So just a little bit about the MCAT for you guys before we jump into all the fun stuff. So first of all, more than 85,000 people will sit for this test in a year. That's crazy. Those stats come from the AAMC's website, if you're wondering. And the total seated time for the test is about 7.5 hours. So it's definitely not a joke, something you'd really need to prepare for. And in total, it's 4 sections. So they're Chem Phys, CARS, which stands for Critical Analysis and Reading, and Biochem, as well as Psych Soc. And this is the new MCAT. So in 2015, they changed over from the old version. So this is brand new. It has some more focus on the social sciences. That's why you see Psych Soc in there a little more. And yeah, overall, there's kind of a new scoring system as well. So you can see in that little image that's on the side, in each of the 4 sections, you get scored from a 118 to a 132. And it's scored on a bell curve. So 125 is the median. So that's where 50% of people will score. If you score above that, then you've scored better than 50% of people. Scored below that, less than 50%. So all of those totals of the 125s add up to either between 472 and a 528. So with 500 being right in the middle again. So that's where 50% of people will score overall. Good deal. And you do get your scores back about 1 month after you sit from the test. So some other people who take different graduate school tests or professional school tests, they get theirs back right away, which I'm so jealous of. But we get 1 long month to wait until after we sit for the test. And that's because they have to figure out all of the statistics of where people lie and, you know, accounting for different questions on each test. So it does cost about $315 to take it. And there's different times. If you sign up for it closer to the test, it might cost you a little bit more. And there's always fees to reschedule and different things too. And one important note too is that you can only take it 3 times in a year and 7 times in your lifetime. So that, I think that is an interesting point. I don't know anyone who could survive taking the MCAT in 3 times in a year. That would be kind of crazy. I know some people who have done it twice, but make sure that you want to prepare really well your first time so that you don't have to worry about that at all. And that was my goal, was just to take it once and be done. So now that you guys know a little bit about the basics of the MCAT, this is kind of how I started to prepare. So when I was thinking about taking the MCAT, the first thing I thought about was when I was going to take it, because that would dictate when I was going to study, how I was going to study, all that fun stuff. So the most important thing is to choose a date. For me, I chose to take it in January. It was one of the first dates that it was offered. And that worked out really well for me because I have a 6-week winter break at Ole Miss, which was very nice. So I just knew I was going to sit down and study for probably 5 straight weeks, give myself one off for kind of Christmas and New Year's, and then just go ahead and take the test. So chose that date and kind of backtracked from there. So I would recommend doing that too. Pick your date, and then you're going to want to, mine was kind of a shorter time frame to prepare. Most people recommend taking about 3 to 4 months to prepare. But I always say, kind of know yourself, figure out how you study best. I tend to do better when I kind of cram for something or just kind of do it all in one sitting. So for me, doing this kind of all compacted in one was good. Then you want to plan how, when, and where you're going to study. So for most people, the recommended amount of studying hours is about 300 hours. So that's a pretty good amount if you think about how much you study for a normal test. I might study for, 5-10 hours for a chemistry test or something like that. So 300 hours is definitely not insignificant. And so my study plan, knowing that people prepare for about 300 hours, was to take those 5 weeks over winter break and study 5 to 6 days per week, about 8 hours per day. So that is what I did. I treated it just like a job, and I ended up studying for about 250 hours, and with a little bit of sporadic studying during the semester. I was also taking biochemistry in the semester that was leading up to the MCAT, so that was some great preparation too. And so full disclosure here, I am also a Kaplan student brand ambassador, so I may be just a tiny bit biased, but I took the Kaplan Live Online course and absolutely loved it. It was my saving grace, I think. There are so many great resources out there, and there's free resources like Khan Academy. The AAMC has some great resources too. I personally liked Kaplan, and I chose to do their Live Online course. And I also, during the semester, I studied at this cute little coffee shop that you can see in the corner. It's called The Graduate. For all my Ole Miss people out there, I'm sure y'all have studied there before too. And it was really nice because there was kind of some background noise, but the chairs were really comfy, and I could just go sit there with my Kaplan books and my biochemistry stuff and grind for a little bit. Then when I got home, I locked myself in my basement, basically, and we have this big table down there. So that is where I sat and studied, just spread out all my books, all my papers, and that was kind of my space. It was nice too because I do have other siblings, and my dog was there at home too, so I could kind of keep everybody out of my space, which was good. So I would recommend finding a spot that you really like to study and that you can kind of remain consistent into, whether that's a coffee shop near you, or it is somewhere in your house or your apartment, or even a local library. Those are great places to do that. Then, so I'll talk about this a little bit when I go into content and strategy prep, but taking practice tests and doing practice questions is probably the most important aspect of preparing for the MCAT, at least in my opinion. And so I ended up taking 6 full-length practice tests and 1 half-length diagnostic. I honestly wish that I could have done more. If I had had time to do that, I definitely would have. But just to give you guys an idea, that is about 7.5 hours per test. And so that's in addition to all of that other kind of studying you're doing throughout the week on content and strategy. And I mentioned this earlier, but my goal was to take this test once and be done with it. I think it's kind of expensive to take, and it's a long time sitting there. It's a long time of preparing for the test as well. So my goal was 1 and done, and hopefully y'all's will be too, so you can just get out of the way. Alrighty. So now that y'all know kind of in general how I set up to prepare, I started off just doing true content prep. So the MCAT is an interesting beast because you do have to know a great amount of content in lots of different subject areas, but it's also not like any other test you've seen before. So preparing for the strategy aspect of it is very important too. I think that looking at some strategy early on is definitely really helpful, but if you don't know the content, you likely will not be able to focus as much on strategy and use that knowledge on questions and apply your strategy skills. So I focused on content first, and I wanted to get through all of my Kaplan books and do practice questions as well while I was doing that. So what's covered on the MCAT in Chem Phys, you want to think about general chemistry, organic chemistry, intro to physics, and with organic chem, you guys might see, I don't know if y'all can see my little thing over here, but I live for the puns and especially the silly chemistry puns. So this is me before an organic exam, and then afterwards I'm dying. Oh, you guys have taken organic chemistry, you probably get that joke. Otherwise, go look it up. But for biochem, then think about your intro to biology class, your intro to biochem, and probably some genetics as well. Then for CARS, it's a little bit like the ACT reading comprehension, but a whole lot crazier. So you'll get some articles in there to read that are from various scientific journals in different disciplines. So some of them are economics, which I really liked those ones since that is my major. And there's also some psychology ones, things about philosophy, which those were kind of hard for me. That's a very different way to think, and just a lot of different disciplines. So for content prep as well, and I talk about this a little bit in strategy too, but for CARS, preparing for the content aspect of that, it involves just a lot of reading. So reading in different disciplines. If you're in biology or biochemistry, you've probably just been reading lots of those type of journal articles, and a lot of your research articles that you've gone over in class are likely in those disciplines. So they're going to be read a lot differently than something like a philosophy paper or an economics paper would be. So go look at some of those journals, go read the newspaper, grab anything you can get your hands on just to really get your comprehension up, which is good. And then for psychology and sociology, think about your introduction to psychology courses and sociology courses and any other humanities you've taken. Those will probably help you in there as well. Good deal. Then I also think that the best content prep, in addition to when you sit down and really start to grind on your true studying time, is just to really do well in your prerequisite courses. There's a reason that all this content is what's on the MCAT, and that's because in those required prereq courses, that is what's preparing you to take this test. So if you can focus and study really hard in your introductory biology class and organic and physics and genetics and biochem especially, then you are just going to have to review in those subjects rather than try to learn it all again. So make sure to do really well in your prerequisite courses. It will be great for your GPA and also for your MCAT. So double bonus. Alrighty. So now for strategy prep, I mentioned this is the other aspect of the MCAT. So the MCAT is a very different test. The questions that they'll ask, some of them are like multiple choice questions that you would see in a normal biology or general chemistry or organic chemistry class, and they'll be about synthesis or something like that. And those are just kind of content, you either know it or you don't type of questions. But a majority of the test is based on passages. And so with that, you have to get used to reading the passages and answering the questions and figuring out what answers are correct and what answers are not correct. So this is where a course really comes in handy. So the Kaplan course for me was really awesome. I kind of laughed at doing strategy prep because when I took the ACT, I just took it cold my first time, had no idea even how many sections were on it, and ended up getting my best score. So I was like, oh, the strategy prep thing is so silly. That's not a real thing. It doesn't help you very much. But let me be the one to tell you that that is not the case for the MCAT. So make sure that whether you're taking a true course or if you're just looking at some things on the AAMC's website or Khan Academy, that you do focus on that strategy piece as well. Then also with strategy, so just learning how to take the question or how to answer the questions and figure out which answers are phrased in a way that's more likely to be correct or incorrect, you also really need to build up your stamina. So sitting down somewhere for 7.5 hours, even though you do get several breaks in between, is really difficult, especially if you're in undergrad right now. Typically our classes are 50 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes. And I even find myself getting restless at the end of those hour and 15-minute classes. Well, the sections for the MCAT, the shortest one is an hour and a half that you're sitting there staring at a computer screen, trying to answer these questions and being really focused. So that takes some preparation to be able to do that. So building up your stamina can mean just studying for those 8 hours straight. That's partly why I decided to prepare the way I did, was because I was very used to being focused for that long. Then I also think that that's where taking practice tests really comes in handy too, because if you're taking a practice test properly and only giving yourself the right amount of breaks and really sitting there, not moving from your chair at all for the right amount of time, then you're going to be prepared to do the same exact thing when the real test day comes around. Then I mentioned this earlier, but for cars, definitely make sure that you're reading things that you don't normally read, things in like high-level opinion pieces in the newspaper, other academic journals as well. And then make sure that you summarize them and try to talk to somebody about them, whether it's, I always talk to my dad. I would read the newspaper in the morning, which I had a great habit of doing in high school and kind of lost that in college. So I would sit down and read some interesting articles in the newspaper or something that I had pulled up on my computer. And then I would have a conversation with my dad about it and really need to summarize those key points and kind of figure out what the argument was. So that was very helpful for me as well. And I think that that's good practice too. Then also practice getting up early. So my classes last semester, when I was in fall semester of junior year, I don't think I had a single one that started before 9 a.m. And the MCAT at, I think all testing locations, you start at 8 a.m., which means you probably have to be at the testing center at around 7:30. And being at the testing center means you need to get up however early, especially if you're going to drive there, and get ready and get all your stuff together. So getting up early is something, especially if you're not used to doing that you really need to practice doing. So again, when I was studying for those 8 hours a day, I would get up at 6 a.m. and it was not fun because that was my break and that's usually, time to sleep in. But I think that that's so important, just getting your body in a rhythm and making sure that you're not asleep halfway through the test, if you're used to getting up around 9 a.m. or so. And then also with strategy prep. So this is not something that's necessarily for the test, but just test taking skills strategy wise. Know where you're going for the day of the test. So this testing center, you've probably never been to it before. Make sure that you're going to go check it out before the day of the test. I did that. So the day before I took the MCAT, I kind of took that as a little bit of a break day. And the very first thing I did in the morning was got up at the same time that I was going to go to the testing center and actually drove there. I put it into Google Maps and went to the center, figured out where I was going to park, where I needed to go in, so that there were no unknowns when I was actually going to go there the following day. So I think that that was really helpful for kind of peace of mind for me too, especially because I am especially directionally challenged. So that was really good to know where I was going. Good deal. Okay, so just some general tips and then we'll jump into the Q&A section. So first of all, staying motivated while you're studying for 300 or so hours can be pretty difficult. The first thing that I would say is remember why you're doing it, right? So it is to get into medical school, but it's also, why did you go into medical? Why do you want to go into medicine? So you're eventually going to be helping patients, and this knowledge that you're learning right now is going to help you to take care of patients in the future. So I think that if you can remember that, that'll help you get up early in the morning and sit there for 7 hours a day studying. For me, I have a little mission statement that I've written, and I had that pinned up on my mirror. And I also had a goal set for myself. So I think that that's another important part of staying motivated is to set a goal. And my goal initially that I set, I thought was going to be pretty high. And after taking some practice tests and doing a couple other things, my goal was high but realistic. And after doing a couple different practice tests, I realized that I could probably push up my goal and still be able to attain it. So I ended up erasing my marker off of my mirror and writing a higher goal for myself. So it's okay to change your goals, but make sure that you're pushing yourself with them too. You don't want to get complacent, and put it in a place that you're going to see it every day. That's going to keep you accountable. And also, this is kind of a psychology thing. If you've been studying psychology or prepping for the MCAT with that, talk to somebody about your goals too. So I was very nervous doing this because I don't like sharing my scores with people. And I ended up telling some of my close friends and my family members, this is my goal score and this is what I want to do. So saying that out loud makes it very real, and it makes it like, okay, well, I'm going to end up having to tell these people my true score. So I better pull it off. I better do it. And that helped me to study too, and to really focus and stay motivated. Alongside just those goals and things to help you get up in the morning, taking care of yourself when you're doing all of that studying and your brain is working hard is very important too. So make sure that you're still exercising and you're eating well during this whole thing. So that's why the picture of me and my dog going on a hike is up there. On the days that I was off, I would always make sure that I got outside and I went and did something, whether that was just a walk with my dog or hanging out with some friends that I hadn't seen in a while, or even just doing something fun, playing golf with my family. And along with kind of taking those breaks and doing something active on your days off, make sure too that you have kind of a regular exercise plan. It actually helps your brain to learn things and function a lot better if you have regular exercise too. So that I made that a part of my study routine too. 3 days a week, I would go to the gym. I would get up earlier than normal and go to the gym and work out before I came back and studied. And that helped me to stay alert and also to be fit and able to not be quite as restless when I was sitting in that chair for so long. Then let's see. So the other thing with staying motivated is to have a plan and do your best to stick to it. So I mentioned after I set my date that I put together a study plan. So with that Kaplan course that I got, they gave us kind of an agenda and different homework items and topics that we were going to go over every single week. And actually they broke it down by day, which was great for me. I'm very much a list person. So I liked that I had boxes to check every single day to keep myself accountable. And so most of the time I stuck to that plan and it helped to keep me on task. However, not every single day did I get everything done. There were just times when things got in the way and I ended up having to go run an errand and couldn't finish one thing. But that meant I knew that I had to catch up on the next day. So do your best to stick to your plan. Don't freak out if you're not hitting all of the marks. Just make sure that you catch up and that you keep yourself on task so that you don't find yourself a week before the MCAT going, oh my goodness, I still have prep that I really need to do and I don't feel ready for this test. All right, then my next general tip is just practice, practice, practice. So practice tests are super, super important. There are many, many practice tests that are available online. The AAMC practice test, there's actually 3 this year now, which is awesome. There were only 2 when I was going through and I was taking it because the new MCAT had only been around for 2 years. So now if y'all are prepping this year, you get an extra one, which is very exciting. My recommendation is to save those practice tests for the last because they are going to be the most realistic possible. So whatever other prep course you're doing, I would say try to take those tests and maybe one of the AAMC tests kind of interspersed in there, but really save those true ones for the last few. And make it as close to the real deal as possible. So I mentioned that you're going to be sitting there for 7.5 hours. And if you have to practice doing that. So throw your phone across the room. Don't bring any food in there. You're not going to be able to have food in the testing center, and only take those scheduled breaks. So they give you about 10 minutes in between each section. And then there's kind of a 30-minute break in between the first 2 and the last 2 sections for lunch. I was one of the last people done actually in my testing center when it came to the true test day because I took every single break. And so to each their own on all of that, I think it helped me to kind of calm down from the last section and get myself ready to move on. But I would say when you're doing practice tests, make sure that you're only doing the breaks that you're going to take during the real test day. So don't sit around for an hour taking the lunch break when you're only really going to have half an hour. All right, so that's all the practice tests. There's also other things you can do to practice when you don't have 7.5 hours to sit around. And one of those things is flashcards. So I always had them on my phone whenever I was going in between places or I was running errands. I remember I was shopping with my mom and my sister one Sunday, and I was waiting for my sister to try something on. I would sit there and just flip through flashcards. Psych Soc was the hardest section for me, and a lot of that is vocab. So I used flashcards a ton for that. But whatever subject you might be weaker in, flashcards are a great way to kind of get those basics down. So another good way to practice. Oh, somebody just asked about Anki. So I actually didn't know about Anki when I was studying for the MCAT, but that is an awesome resource to check out for sure. I used the Kaplan MCAT Flashcards app that comes with the course, and it was really great, but Anki is also another good tool. Then also practice your routine too. So that just goes along with getting up at the same time every day and making sure that you're you know what you're going to do to get yourself ready for the test, whether that's, getting up and taking a shower first thing in the morning and being ready by a certain time. Make sure that you have all of that practiced out too. Then also take time to reward yourself. So schedule in different times to hang out with friends and family or watch your favorite TV show. I've recently been watching The Good Doctor, and I am obsessed with that show. It is really great if you haven't watched it. But also make sure that that is a reward for you. So you have to get all of your studying done for the day before you go hang out with your friends, or if you watch that show. That was really good for me. I mentioned I'm a list person, and so if I didn't have everything done on my list, then my reward got pushed off a little bit, and I made sure that I got everything I needed to done first. All right, and then my last general tip is after you take the MCAT. So keep yourself busy during that month in between when you sit for the test and when you get your scores, because the anxiety is so real, you guys. It's a big deal, and it's part of what determines where you'll go to med school and kind of the opportunities that you'll have. So it's very scary after you've taken that, knowing that there's nothing else you can do but wait. So for me, I was going back to school, which was perfect because I had so many other things going on that I didn't really think about getting my MCAT score back until it got kind of like 1 week before. And then that was a lot of like, okay, hey, you're not doing anything today. Let's go to dinner. Let's go do this, to try to keep myself busy and keep my mind off of it, because there really is nothing you can do until you get those scores back. That's a very exciting time. All right. So what questions do y'all have? Go ahead and throw those in the chat or the Q&A. See.
Okay, Megan, I'll go ahead and pop back on screen real quick.
Yeah.
I just have a couple of announcements. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone real quick. Okay, don't forget to throw your questions into the Q&A. And also, if you have any suggestions for future webinars you would like to see, go ahead and throw that into the Q&A or the chat as well, so we can keep that in mind in our planning. And I just want to announce one more time that you can save $250 on an MCAT prep course through Kaplan using the PreMedStar code, PreMedStar200. This $250 is only valid until the 22nd of this month, so you guys are going to want to register soon. And don't forget about the PreMedStar app. Android users, text the word PreMed to 313131, and we'll send you the link to download. And iPhone users, we're going to go ahead and wait another week or two, but our app is coming soon. So you guys are going to want to download that quickly so that you can be entered into a raffle to win a free comprehensive MCAT prep course. Like I said earlier, if you aren't connected with Megan or I, make sure to find us on PreMedStar. We'd love to get to know each and every one of you. So post on there a little bit about yourself and your plans, and that way we can all connect and get through this journey together. Okay. And let's see. I see a ton of questions coming into the Q&A. So let's start going through them. Let's see. So Megan, the first one I see is, what do you do if your GPA is not outstanding?
That's a good question. I think it's important to remember that your GPA is only one factor in your whole application. So the MCAT is another, but again, the GPA and the MCAT are just numbers. They don't necessarily say much about you as a person. So if your GPA is not outstanding, but there's nothing you can do to pull it up, say you've already graduated or you're in your senior year and it's kind of past that point, I would recommend having really strong extracurriculars, emphasizing your experiences and kind of what makes you unique. If you can, do your best to pull up your GPA, since that is part of what they consider. But also it is kind of a slide. I've heard is a little bit of a sliding scale. So if you're able to have a higher MCAT score and your GPA is not crazy good, then that's going to show them that you can still handle that difficult science curriculum that they're going to throw at you in med school.
Okay, awesome. And I just threw a blog post on PreMedStar into the chat about what to do if you have a little bit of a lower GPA, so make sure to check that out. And next question I see is someone wants to apply to graduate programs, but they require them to take the MCAT in January or February. They're nervous about taking it with so little time to prepare. What do you recommend they do?
That's a great question too. So I mentioned that I studied in just 5 weeks, so it's definitely doable. It is difficult if you don't have some sort of break where you can kind of cram it all in, but it's mid-November right now, right? So you still have a little while that you can prepare. If you know that you need to take it in January or February, I would choose a date if you're sure that that's what you want to do, and sit down and really have a real conversation with yourself about how many hours you can realistically dedicate per week and figure out what you're going to do when, and set up whether you're going to take a course or if you're just going to do content prep yourself, figure out where you're going to get that different information from.
Okay, and then would you suggest a private tutor, and what are your tips for preparing for the CARS section?
So as far as private tutors go, it probably depends on how you study best. So if you are the type of person that having a private tutor is going to be really helpful for you and you need that high level of accountability, then absolutely go for a private tutor. I needed something that was very flexible with my schedule. I knew I was going to be traveling a little bit, so I ended up doing more of kind of a self-paced option. So I would say know yourself and determine if that is going to necessitate a private tutor for you, or if you can kind of self-manage your time a little bit better. And then you can go with kind of a more personalized option. And then I think the second part of that was, what are your tips for CARS? So I kind of mentioned just reading a lot of different journals and things to prepare yourself to analyze that. And I believe somebody else asked another question about CARS that I'll kind of go ahead and answer along with this part. So when you're reading a CARS passage or any other passage that you're reading to prepare for CARS, something that I did that was very helpful was I and kind of noted things down as I went. So a strategy that I heard was helpful was, for each paragraph, write just a couple quick notes of what that was about. And if there was something very important about that paragraph, like that's where the key argument was, maybe put a star by it and highlight it. And then, yeah, so I think that was about it.
Okay, and then I see a lot of questions in here asking about how did you set up your study schedule, and what ways they can realistically set up a plan that they can achieve.
Awesome. So as far as setting up a study schedule, you need to choose your date and figure out what your kind of timeline is going to be. And that's honestly the most helpful thing in figuring out what your plan is going to be. If you have several months to study and you're going to be doing it during the semester, that's going to necessitate a different plan, because you're probably going to be studying a few hours a day. And so you'll have to chunk your content and strategy prep into much smaller bites than if you know that you're going to be studying all day. So then you can jump around to multiple different content areas and also do some practice questions, maybe all in the same day. Hopefully that's helpful. I think as far as like truly planning out kind of a master schedule, you can always get kind of a big sheet of paper and just break down kind of week by week and maybe even day by day when you get there, what content you want to cover. If you go to the AAMC's website, they do have all of the different content that's going to be covered on the test, and they even have percentages by it of what the likelihood that is it's going to show up on the test and how much of the test it will be. So you can use that as a guide to figure out what you need, how much you need to study of which subject.
Okay, cool. And I see some people who are curious about how closely your most recent MCAT practice exams through Kaplan were, and how reflective they were of your actual score come test day.
That's a great question. So I was very nervous about that going in as well. I remember looking on a lot of different websites, mentioning any names to see what people were saying about that. My score was, I think it was 4 points higher than the Kaplan score for my AAMC, like the real test. That's why I really recommend that you take those true AAMC practice tests last. The score that I got on my last AAMC practice test was exactly what I got on the real test.
And then some questions are regarding if you used any other study materials outside of Kaplan.
So most of the other study materials I used were from my courses, my prerequisite courses. And I think that was partly because I had kind of developed them. And so I knew my shorthand and I knew what that meant. And I was able to do that pretty quickly. And part of it was my professors had already kind of tailored slides and different things and kind of told us different ways that it might apply to the MCAT or the PCAT, what different people were taking. So that was helpful. I used a little bit of Khan Academy, and I think that was pretty much all of the outside stuff that I used.
Okay, awesome. And then I see a lot of people who are curious about when the best time to take the MCAT is, especially when you're trying to consider your timeline for applying to medical school.
That is a great question. So y'all know that the medical school admission cycle is a rolling process. So the earlier you can get your application in and complete, that's going to give you a better chance to get into medical school. So taking the MCAT as early as your schedule allows is going to be important. For me, I was a little bit nervous about taking it so early, and I took it in January of my junior year. And that worked well for me just because of our break timeline. And I think that as long as you are able to get your MCAT done before you start the application cycle, that's going to help you a lot. I have a few friends who took the MCAT during the semester, or they took it during the summer while they were still applying. And it worked out okay for them, and it kind of went with how they were studying. But they did tell me that it was very stressful to try to write applications and get recommendation letters and do all these other things while they were still trying to study for the MCAT. So I think that was an advantage of taking it during a time that was much earlier on in the cycle, was I was able to just take the MCAT and then focus on solely my application afterwards. Hopefully that helps.
Cool. And then I see a question asking about how much math is on the MCAT and how did you build your stamina?
That is a great question. So math is not necessarily my strong suit, which is kind of funny for an economics major, but they do not allow a calculator for math on the MCAT. And that was probably the hardest thing for me, because I'm the type of person that likes to check 2 + 2 = 4 still. So there's a lot of mental math, and especially in the physics and the chemistry sections, you're going to be doing all sorts of different math. And some of it is even logarithmic. So making sure that you prepare for that portion of the test is important as well. That was one thing that Kaplan really helped me with, was they gave me some great tricks for mental math that I didn't really know, because so often we're allowed to use a calculator on every single test. So there is a good amount of math on the MCAT. And then what was the other one? The other part of that question?
How did you build your stamina?
Oh, how did I build my stamina? Okay, so building my stamina came partly with studying for 8 hours a day. And sometimes it was even more than 8 hours a day, but with some other breaks in there. So that was probably the biggest thing for me. And then taking practice tests too. If you don't have the time to dedicate to studying 8 hours a day every single day, block out a time, block out a Saturday or a Sunday when you don't have work or you don't have anything going on, that you can sit down and take that full 7.5-hour test in one sitting. Doing that is going to help you build up your stamina a lot.
Okay, awesome. And then I see a really great question in here. How long did you take to review one of your full-length exams? And do you have any advice on how to review each exam?
That is a great question. So I'm glad you brought that up, because reviewing after you take your practice exams, reviewing is so important. One feature that I really liked about the Kaplan course specifically was that for every practice test I took, it gave me all of the questions I missed, and it showed me what content areas those were in. So I ended up seeing that after taking my first couple practice tests, I was still really weak in physics, and I knew that I needed to go back and do that. In total, the time that I took to review, I typically would sit and take one test kind of one day, and then the next day I would spend about a half day reviewing that. So likely about 3 to 4 hours, kind of depending on how many I had missed. And a lot of what I did for reviewing those tests was I would go back and figure out what questions I had missed. If it was a passage question, I would reread that passage and figure out exactly where I had gone wrong in my logic of answering that question. And a lot of times I would actually physically write out why I had gotten it wrong, and how I corrected that and figured out how I had gotten it right.
Okay, and then just kind of a follow-up question from there. How often did you take practice exams and how did you space them?
Yeah, good question. So I took that diagnostic half-length test right at the beginning of my studying, and it was only about 4 hours. That was pretty easy. Then I did most of my content review before I jumped into any other practice tests. So about 2 weeks into my studying was the first time that I took a full-length practice test. And yeah, that score was not super great because it was kind of my first real one all the way through. Then after that, leading up to the test, I took practice tests more and more frequently. So the very last week that I was studying, I took 2, and I took kind of like 1 every other day. So I would take 1, review it for half a day, do some content prep, and then take another one, review it for half a day kind of deal. So I think that build up to doing your practice tests, but then start doing them pretty frequently once you have that content and that strategy down and you're just needing repetition and practice.
Awesome. And then let's see, how many points did you go up by from your diagnostic or your first full length compared to your actual score?
I went up 19 points from my diagnostic score to my full score. So don't get discouraged if what you initially start out at is not where you want to be. You can absolutely learn, and it's a test that prep is really, going to be helpful with. So yeah, that's how much I went up.
Wow, nice. And then let's see, someone's asking if you're a naturally good test taker, or what are some tips you can do to improve your test taking skills, specifically the ones needed for the MCAT?
Good question. I would say I'm a pretty decent natural test taker, thankfully. I've always done decently well on standardized tests. The MCAT is a totally different beast, though. It's not something that you can just wing, or that natural testing ability will kind of get you through. As far as building up those skills for test taking, practicing is going to be your best friend for doing that and figuring out where you went wrong. Taking parts of a course that is very strategy based, or even there are some great books out there that you can read about the strategy of test taking, and they'll give you some examples and help walk you through the logic. Those are going to help you improve your test taking skills. Especially for me on the cars section, I took almost kind of a mini logic course, and that helped me with cars, but it also helped me with other parts of the test because a lot of it is just very logical. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Awesome. And then do you have any suggestions or tips for someone who's taking the MCAT in 2 months, but only feels like they know about 40% of the content?
Yeah, I think that that's okay. You have plenty of time if you still have 2 months. Figure out where you are weakest and focus on those areas primarily, I would say. So if you're naturally good at organic chemistry, maybe review that a little bit. But if you're not so hot at physics, spend some time there, even though it's probably going to hurt a little bit because you won't get as many questions right there initially. And definitely set up kind of a timeline and a checklist for yourself of what content you're going to review and how in-depth you're going to go with that too.
Awesome. And then I see a couple of questions asking which logic course you used.
Okay, so the logic course was actually a part of the Kaplan course. So it is a part of the strategy prep. So the strategy prep that I mentioned kind of comes tucked into many courses. So the Kaplan one specifically, they have a whole section about logic and logical arguments and what those mean. I ended up going and kind of looking a little bit outside for some outside resources too, because I was very interested in that. And so I did some reading and just on different websites, and also a little bit of Khan Academy on some of the logic. So I kind of, mini logic course, I guess, was not kind of the best way to phrase. I used parts of the logic from the Kaplan course and kind of did some outside research.
Perfect. And then let's see, how did you pace yourself throughout the exam?
So I mentioned that there are discrete questions that are just kind of multiple choice, you know it or you don't, and there's passage-based questions. So the way I paced myself on the exam was all of these science sections are 95 minutes, and I would always I would do the discrete questions first. So they are not all together. They're not just kind of the first 15. You have to kind of figure out where they are, and they're kind of bunched in sections of 5 or so. So I would do those first, and hopefully they would only take me about 15 minutes, like 10, 15 minutes. If it took a little longer, that was okay. But kind of keeping up with pacing was definitely important, and getting those discrete questions done first helped, because those were, again, if you either know it or you don't, and if I didn't, I moved on. As far as passages, I'm trying to remember exactly how many passages there were per each section. I believe it might vary. I think it's like 7 or 9. And so just kind of take the total time that you have left afterwards from those discrete questions and divide up those passages and try to keep yourself on pace. I would always the first thing I did when I got my sheet of paper was write out the times that I had for each of the passages. So when I was going to finish discrete, when I was going to finish each passage, and try to keep myself on task with doing those.
Okay, and then I see some questions about the Kaplan review books.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, how long did it take you to get through them, and how did you pace going through X amount of chapters a day?
Good question. So it took me, going through the Kaplan books, all of them, it did take me that pretty much full 5 weeks to get through, but that was partly because I was bouncing around in between content and the larger book that they had with a bunch of lessons, and that's partly where some of their live instruction comes from too. So it did take me pretty much the full 5 weeks to get through all of the books. As far as pacing per day, I generally did, I usually did, depending on kind of the subject, 3 chapters out of one content book, 3 chapters out of another, and then 3 out of another. So depending on kind of what subject it was, it would probably vary or kind of range in between 5 to 8-ish chapters per day, but more or less depending on how difficult it was and how well I knew it.
Okay, awesome. And let's see. Oh, I see a great question about strategy, especially for the card section. Did you do the passages in order, or did you skip around?
That is a very good question. So I skipped around, that's for sure. I mentioned that philosophy was not my strong point. So as soon as I saw a philosophy passage, I was like, okay, we're going to save that one till the end. And I usually did some of my favorite passages first. So I would kind of skim the first line or two and figure out what type of passage it was going to be. So if it was going to be economics, if it was going to be psychology, something experimental, then I would usually do those first. And I didn't necessarily go through all the passages and say okay, this one's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. If I came across one that I felt like I could handle, I would just go ahead and do that. And if I didn't, then I would skip it, and I would mark down that I needed to come back to it next. So I did skip around.
Okay, awesome. And we are just coming up on the hour. Megan, do you have any last tips to leave people wherever they are in their MCAT journey?
I would say y'all can do it. I believe in you guys. Make sure that you just kind of know yourself, know how you study best. There's so many different opinions about how to go about studying for the MCAT, and mine is just one of them. So figure out the way that you study best and how it's going to, be the ultimate way to prepare you for the MCAT, and go with your gut on that. And also make sure that you join PreMedStar, and definitely use the on-track portfolio. That's just one kind of general med school tip as well, that I wish I had the on-track portfolio. So that Lauren showed you guys earlier. Make sure you do that too.
Perfect. Thank you. Everyone, say thanks to Megan. Thanks for sharing all your MCAT wisdom with us. Good luck, everyone, studying for your MCAT. Don't forget to join PreMedStar. Just like Megan said, connect with us and reach out and meet other members who are going through the same process as you. Who knows, you can find some great study groups or resources to help you throughout your MCAT prep. So this video will be posted on the PreMedStar YouTube channel. Make sure to keep in contact, and we'll see you guys next time.
Good luck,
Don't
y'all.
forget to text the word PreMed to 313-131, and we'll send you a notification when the app is ready to download. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you all.